course, I was a fan, an obsessive fan, just like all of you. But I saw that someone, well, Criterion Collection, I only have one film on Criterion Collection, Board of Radio. And they told me, Susan Arastagai, who's so great, that produces all those wonderful commentaries, said, TCM has programmed Board of Radio for TCM Underground. So I was beside myself excited. And so, but I didn't know who programmed it, so I went on Twitter and I said, whoever programmed Board of Radio on TCM, I love you, and that's how Millie and I met, and Scott McKee. So they are my mother and father at TCM, and I am their child. So, this film, first of all, I didn't have a red dress, but I did wear red pants for you, and I tried to be as Technicolor as possible today. This is a coat from the 50s, so there you go. This movie is one of the most important films to me personally of Cirque's movies. This one and the follow-up, There's Always Tomorrow. And when Illeana Douglas and I were making Grace of My Heart, this film became super important to us, even though it wasn't like our film necessarily. It was the feelings and the being inside the feelings of the female character, and inside her conflicts, and inside her complexity, and especially in the complexity of her desire. And so that's what's really been interesting to me about this film, and the fact that the reason red becomes such an important color for those of you who have seen it is that, you know, at one point, Jane Wyman's character dares to put on a red dress, and it's a big scandal. So, scandalously wearing red. So, and you know, there you have it right there. It's like she's daring to put her desire out there. And you know, one thing that we found was that Cirque really, through sort of, you know, the excesses of the color and the style, there's also this kind of restraint of feeling that actually makes it that much more emotional, if that makes sense, which is a kind of just phenomenally gorgeous thing. And so lacking in a lot of films now, sadly, because I don't think that people process it quite like that, although we all love Todd Haynes' version of this film. And of course, Fassbinder also did his version of this film, All He Fears the Soul. So this was their second movie together, the stars, Rock Hudson and Jane Wyman, with Cirque. They had done a Magnificent Obsession. And I just have to stop for 1 second and say, I learned while we were cutting Grace of My Heart, Martin Scorsese was our exec producer, and I don't think I ever really understood film preservation until I saw a new print at his in his screening room of Magnificent Obsession, because there was always this moment where Agnes Moorehead comes in and into Rock Hudson's hospital room, and he's saying, you know, he's smoking cigarettes, and she's like, put away those cigarettes, and where did you get those pajamas? And to me, having seen it on TV and seen crappy, you know, prints of the movie, it was just regular pajamas. But boy, when I saw that restoration, I was like, oh, I see what she's talking about. Those are some fancy-ass pajamas. So I was like, okay, I get it. We need to restore these things, because we're not getting the full meaning. So one other thing I just wanted to say about this film and Cirque's, you know, perspective on the children is very interesting. I mean, the children in this movie and the children in the next movie that he did, There's Always Tomorrow, are teenagers, mainly teenagers, who are just phenomenally judgmental of their parents. And in this case, in both cases, you know, where they just really, well, I could use a euphemism, but I won't, but they block their mother's, you know, desire and their father's desire, and There's Always Tomorrow. And it is a kind of odd thing when you realize that your children, your teenage children, they're like judging you, you know, it's almost like they're like, okay, now you settle down, because I'm going to go have some fun now, you know, and what are you doing? So it's an interesting thing that children have this kind of, that they're actually more conservative in these movies of Cirque's than the parents themselves. And it's also interesting in terms of Cirque's own relationship, or lack of relationship, with his own child, who he had to leave behind in Germany, and that child ended up in the Nazi Party, and it's pretty horrific. He never was able to reconcile with that child at all. So his view of children is pretty funny. But I also love too that he has a sense of irony that's lost on, that he always felt was lost on Americans, and particularly in the titles of his films. You know, All That Heaven Allows is pretty loaded, and that's why it was so easy for, you know, Todd, I think, to come along and just go, oh, Far From Heaven, you know, and I think this is in many ways Far From Heaven, and but it's also very heavenly as well. I'm sure you'll enjoy it just as much as I do in that way, and here we go, worship.